Hi, this is Bob from Hobby Concepts, and today I'm going to finish up this Ford Aeromax. In part one we built the chassis, and today we're going to do the body and all the detailing. I'm going to show how I paint it and do some of the detail stuff. It turned out, I think, really spectacular. Love this color, just really eye-catching. Truck looks beautiful, runs great. Let's get started. So last time in part one we built the Aeromax chassis up to this point. Actually have it running and driving. So really, what's left? What's left is making it look beautiful like a truck. So I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to show how I paint them. We're going to detail this thing out. We'll do a few little upgrades that are pretty simple. But let's take a look at some of these parts. So first off, we have the Aeromax body. And the Aeromax body is very nice. It consists of a body. There's a roof cap, there's some aero parts, front bumper, there's the sleeper cap which sits on top here, and then there's the aero skirts that go down along the side of the chassis, something like that. So when it's all together, really a beautiful streamlined looking truck. So couple things. First off, when I prep the bodies, I wash them in dish soap and water, and I remove any mold lines. Now, it's going to be probably almost impossible to see on video, but there's a mold line right here. Okay, and so the way I do it is I scrape it with an X-Acto knife, just sideways, until the mold line goes away. And so I'll scrape with an X-Acto knife to get rid of the mold line, and then I'll use some 1000 and 2000 grit sandpaper to polish it out. So in this truck, the mold line, and a lot of times I like to use a Sharpie to highlight it, is like this, and then it runs up here. It's so pronounced that you can actually push a Sharpie against it and it'll hold it in place. No mold lines on the side. There's a little bit of a mold line right here. And I don't mind running a Sharpie along them, because what I find is that makes it easy to see when I've gotten rid of it. So I've got to get rid of those mold lines. That's the first thing. So I'll scrape them, I'll wet sand them, I'll wash the body in soap and water, and it'll be ready to paint. No mold lines on here, no mold lines on here that I could find. So pretty much the only mold line removal is going to be on this body. Now the second thing that Tamiya does, and this is in all their semis, well, not all their semis, but most of them. Back in the old days, they had a light unit that actually had switches that you mounted in here, like on-off switches, and then the plug for the trailer wiring would mount in here. And they give you, let's just take a look at it here, they give you these little pieces to fill the holes. There's one right there. It's designed to mount from the back side and fill in the holes. But of course, it doesn't fill in the holes. It still leaves them as dimples. They don't even match. There's a small one on this side and a big one on this side. So what I'm going to do is cut a piece of plastic, probably that wide, to cover this. And then I'll put a couple of trim pieces, and I'll show that as I do it. Just to kind of hide these, because the back of this is so plain. I'll dress it up with a few bits of plastic to hide it. So that's just kind of normal stuff. So there's the body. The interior consists of a dashboard, steering wheel, steering column. This is the plug for the other hole. And then a couple seats with seat bases. The seats and seat bases actually glue together. And so what I do is I use Tamiya, well, actually, let me just glue it together. I use Tamiya extra thin plastic model cement, and you'll notice these have no paint on them. The way this cement works is it actually melts the pieces together. So I push this down on top here. It just takes a few seconds, and it actually will melt the plastic enough that they become one piece. So paint interferes with that operation, so I like to glue the seats together very first thing, so they can be drying while I'm working on other parts. And the same thing with that body. I'll sand it, wash it, and do all that stuff. I'll wash all the parts, of course, and then they'll be ready for me to work on. The next thing that I like to do is figure out the paint color. Now, I've been really thinking about this one quite a bit, and I've decided to go with Tamiya TS52 Candy Lime Green. It's just a beautiful, vibrant color. Really stands out. It's got a little metallic in it, and it's super easy to paint. It just flows beautifully. I love this color. So, and I haven't done many trucks this color, so we're going to do it in Candy Lime Green. We're going to use Tamiya Fine Surface Primer to prime the parts. Wash them with soap and water, prime them with this. The light gray color is a good backing for this green. And then we'll use Tamiya TS13 Clear Gloss over the top of that. And again, I'll show the painting process. The seats and the dashboard, I'll paint with the fine surface primer, and I'll just leave them that color. It's a really nice looking gray. It's got a flat finish. It looks fantastic, so we will paint them with that. And then Tamiya provides some decals. There's decals for the instrument panel, which I'll use, and some little grill decals, the Ford decals. I'm going to probably use almost all of these decals, and very rarely do I decal my trucks, but I'm going to use the decals on this truck. So I will also show that process as we go. So let me get started. I'm going to go ahead and clean this part up to get going, and wash it and kind of do my primer bit. And while I'm doing that, I'll come back and we'll look at installing the exhaust system on the truck. As I work away in my body, I did some trimming and sanding just to get rid of those lines. I sprayed a little primer on it just to make sure everything was looking good. And so far it looks fine. And then I'm making a piece of plastic to cover this back, these holes. So I just took a piece of plastic cardstock, and then I cut a couple of plastic strips from this evergreen plastic just to give it a little detail. So I just set these in about 1/8 of an inch, and I'll use some Tamiya cement here to glue them down. Nice thing about this cement is it just wicks underneath the plastic and glues it. It has to dry for a couple minutes, but now I'll do the same thing, and I'll glue this to the back here, and then I'll re-drill those 2 mounting holes from the back side, and it just gives a little more interest to the back of the truck, plus covers up all these holes. Got a few of my interior pieces here, and my dash, my steering wheel. Just thought I'd show a couple things that I do. I'm using a fine marking pen just to do a little extra detail on the seats. They've got this slot here. Not a lot, just kind of give it a little bit of life. Seats look a little better with a little life on them. And then on the dash, Tamiya has, this is a pretty simple dash. This kit dates way back to their early days of RC trucks. I always cut the decal sheet with a very sharp X-Acto knife. I just put a new blade in it. I do not use scissors. I trim it really close to the sticker. And then in the instructions, Tamiya has got a decal layout with the numbers. So I'll just pop this one off here. For example, this sticker goes right here. Like that. So I'll just put the rest of the stickers on, and then I will glue on the steering wheel. I'll probably paint this with some dark gray paint. The final step with the interior pieces is I just sprayed some clear flat over the instrument panel, right over the top of the decals. Really makes it look a lot more realistic. So my seats and my panel are done. Now the body I've sprayed with Tamiya fine surface primer, and I just wet sanded it with some 1000 grit very lightly, just to take off any little dust stuff from the primer. And so now I'm going to go ahead and spray the lime green on it. Here's the roof cap in the lime green. And neat color, looks pretty good. So I'll go ahead and spray that, a couple coats of that, and then some clear. We'll get this body painted. You can see how the rear bulkhead turned out with the piece of plastic over there to cover up all the holes. Looks a lot better. Here's my painted body. A couple coats of that Tamiya lime green and a coat of Tamiya clear on top of that. The paint looks really good. So now I've got to do a little bit of work masking off the window frames, the front grille, and I'm going to do the side window frames, and I'll do those in black. One of the things are these little grills down in here, which I don't believe I can mask worth a darn, so I'll probably use a brush to paint those. But other than that, nothing crazy exciting, so I'll mask that off. I'll show you the masking before I paint it. So as you can see, I'm in the process of masking off the window frames. I've masked off this side and the front. I often get the question, how do you get sharp lines? I get it all the time. And so I thought I'd just show a couple of techniques I use. First secret, use good masking tape. That blue stuff, the green stuff from the Home Depot, that stuff is crap, honestly. It just doesn't work. It gets bleed underneath and crummy edges. This stuff is fabulous. Now there might be some other masking tape out there besides Tamiya, but I stopped looking the first time I used this because it's amazing. Super sharp edges. Now, the other thing I do is when I have a corner, is I use an X-Acto knife to cut the tape over the corner. And here's what I mean by that. I'll take some of this 10mm Tamiya masking tape, and I'm gonna mask this bottom edge right here. Let's see if I can do this where you can see it. And I've got a nice straight line there. So we'll get that in, push it down, and now you see I have a curve here that curves down to here, and I'll just use my fingernail to kind of push it in there. So now I'll take my super sharp X-Acto knife, and I change my blades all the time, and I'll just run it along that edge where I want my paint line to be, and then peel it off. So now you see I have a beautiful curve. I don't try to do it ahead of time. I cut it right on the truck. You can see that corner right there, how I cut it. I'll do the same thing here on the back corner. Is I will take the tape, lay it over the corner, run my fingernail around it here to kind of get it seated on that, and then I'll just run my knife around it. And then peel it off. So that's how I get nice round corners. I've still got this one to do, but then that'll do my side window frame. I have the front one done. I have to mask off the grill, and then I'll come back and show you some additional masking. There's my truck all masked off, ready to paint the window frames and the grill. You can see I just used the cheap masking tape to cover large areas or pieces of paper. So now I'll go ahead and I'm going to actually airbrush this with Tamiya semi-flat black, but I could just as easily paint it with the Tamiya semi-flat black spray paint. So I'll go ahead and paint those, and I've got the windshield wipers also to paint at the same time, and then we'll be back and get ready to finish this. I did clear coat the body before I paint the window frames because the window frames are semi-flat. I didn't want them glossy. So once I get those done, I'll be ready to do the final assembly of the body. So I painted the trim. I pulled off the big pieces of tape because that blue tape will leave a residue if you leave it on too long. But I thought I would peel off some of this masking on camera. It's so satisfying to pull it off and see if it worked. So I'm actually being a little bit brave here. Of course, the great thing about doing videos is if it didn't work, I can just not include this clip in the finished product. But it looks like it worked really well. I love this Tamiya tape. It just works super good for me. Alright, so there's my one windshield frame. Do the windshield here. You can see what a nice sharp edge that is. The secret to masking these bodies, besides using really good tape, is just don't plan on doing it real quickly. I spent about an hour just masking this. So it takes a while. The better job masking, the better the finished product. But as you can see, this looked like it turned out really well. Okay, well, I will finish taking the rest of the masking off camera, but that looks really good. One other thing I've done is I painted up some of the accessory parts on these grab rails. I just painted them with some clear flat to make them less toy-like, and then painted the windshield wipers with the semi-flat black. People always ask me, how do you hold these little parts? Well, I've got this thing here that I found. I can't remember, it was on Amazon or eBay. It's just a little painting stand with these little metal rods with a clip on the end, and man, I use this thing all the time. I'll clip a part in it, paint it, and then just stick it in here to let it dry. And I used to try and lay these on a piece of cardboard and the paint would blow them away. This thing works really good. It was pretty cheap too, but anyway, that's my little painting trick for today. Okay, so all the parts are painted. Now it's time to do the final assembly, and we'll start by assembling the rest of the chassis. So the bumpers and the cladding and the coupler, and then when that's done, we'll finish assembling the body. The first step in the Tamiya instructions for the body cladding are to install these chrome steps, and there's a couple here, and there's a couple short ones in the back, and there's a couple on this side. Now, they show you gluing them on. What you don't want to use is Tamiya liquid cement or any kind of plastic cement, because I think I mentioned this earlier, the way this works is it actually melts the pieces together. Well, if they're painted, it doesn't work. So what I use is this E6000 glue. This came from Hobby Lobby, but Lowe's and Home Depot sell it. You got to be a little careful. It comes in colors. You want clear. The stuff is great. It's real sticky. It's real thick, and it's very easy to use. Now you can also use this thin double sticky tape. It doesn't hold quite as good, so on this model I'm going to use this this E6000. You can see it kind of plopping out here, just from the tube tension, but it doesn't take very much. So I'll throw just a couple dots here on the bottom, like this. Because it's very thick, and then just slide the step into place, and this stuff works great. So I'm going to go ahead and glue all the chrome steps on, and that'll take care of these lower arrow pieces. The next step are these very unique brackets, and there is a left and a right, and the only way you can tell is this little tab here is bent one direction, and it offsets to the rear. So the frame is threaded. I already put some Loctite in it. So these just mount up here like that, and these are the supports for our exhaust. The exhaust on this truck is long and skinny, so it's going to mount to these brackets. So the exhaust stacks, there's a two-piece cap here, and I just glued those together with canopy glue, and then they just press fit into the stainless tube here. I used a chrome pen just to touch up the area where this is a chrome pen, liquid chrome, to touch up where the sprues detached. So those are ready to go. They're actually just a press fit later on top of the exhaust, so I'll put those on last. There's a little grab handle here that mounts to this side, and then I want to just show you a couple of little things that are just a little bit tricky on this truck. Not tricky, just easy things to screw up. And if anybody can find ways to screw things up, it is me. Okay, so when we installed these brackets that mount the exhaust, the truck was facing this way, and we've got the brackets, and now it's time to put the exhaust on. But what the instructions don't tell you is they turned the truck around. You can see the plate here. So if you don't turn the truck around, you'll mount them to the wrong side, and then you'll have to take them off. So just be sure to do that, because they mount to the back side. Now there's a brace, and I loosely put this side on. There's a brace that mounts here, and it connects down to this little tab at the bottom. Okay, so I'll put this one on here. It does not go from here to here. So you just something to watch for. Just getting your screwdriver here so I can get a better angle on it. Okay, and then this exhaust will just mount here, and same thing, they use a brace here that mounts to it. And again, I'm just going to mount this in real loosely, and I already put Loctite in the hole. Okay, the brace mounts to the bottom here, and it has a hump in it, so it misses the other brace. That way you can actually screw it in tight. And then I've got 2 more screws to put in here, and that will finish up my exhaust mounting. My plates, since I've been goofing around with some other painting and exhaust, the plates are now dry where I glued on those steps, and they just mount to the side here with 4 3mm screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I will put the 2 side plates on. Boy, that looks good. I like that color on this truck. Well, you can see I've got my aero pieces on, and now it's time to do the front bumper. It just has some fog lights, and there's a fog light lens. You can see they've left openings if you want to add LEDs. Tamiya's MFC light kit has fog light LEDs that would fit in there, or if you want to do your own lighting, you can. So it just has a screw-on cover here. And then this just is held on with 2 screws on the back side. Like this. See the lights here in the grill, and then the grill is just held on with 4 of these, the bumper, with 4 of these little socket head screws, and they just mount it to this metal plate. A little bit of thread lock on that. One in there for now. You can get an idea of what we're looking at. So there's our front bumper. Now I just have 2 things left to do, and we'll finish up the chassis part. One of them is the coupler, and I mentioned I wanted to paint the coupler plate, so I did, and that will mount back here. We'll put the coupler together, and then the other thing is installing the seats up here in the cab. So let me finish bolting the bumper on, and we'll do the coupler assembly. Okay, it's time to put the coupler together, but before I do, I'm just going to show a couple things I sometimes do. I've got my chrome pin here. I'm just going to decorate these nuts. It's like one of those what the heck things. Sometimes little details make your truck stand out. And then I've got a plain old black Sharpie, and I'll decorate these raised little areas here on the back. It's easier to use a Sharpie than a paint pen. So you can see that just add a little detail there for a little interest. I don't know, I like doing this kind of stuff. Sometimes people look at my trucks and say, how come your truck looks like that? How come it looks so good? And they can't put their finger on it, and sometimes it's just some little detail like this. Okay, now we'll put the coupler together. So the coupler has a metal plate that fits in here, and pretty simple. There's a screw that fits in the bottom. This drops over it, and then this has threaded inside to fit into it. So we'll just add a tiny bit of thread lock on that screw. Drop this over it and thread this right down. Standard Tamiya wrench fits it. Okay, and then this whole assembly just drops in here like this and screws down from the top with 3 screws. So I'll go ahead and bolt that down. The final step on the bottom here is this little spring. I already put one of the screws in, but it just mounts in here. And that's a return spring for the latch. Now there's a little spring here. It's a spring that keeps the coupler tilted back, and it just goes on this rod first, and then this goes through here. That with a E-clip on the end. Always take my chances doing these on camera, but what the heck. Okay, and then this assembly then just bolts up right here with a couple 3mm screws from the bottom, and then it bolts down to the chassis with 3mm screws. So I'm going to not show that. I'm going to go ahead and put those screws up from the bottom and screw this down. You can see I mounted this plate up here. It goes in the front set of holes, and then adjusted the rod according to the instructions. And now we get our coupler latch out from underneath the trailer. The final thing I have to do on here, of course, is just mount the seats, which I mentioned I did not do earlier, so I could flip it upside down easily. And just 2 3x8 screws hold those down. Go. Now the chassis is completely finished and ready for the body. So I will set this aside, and now we'll finish up the body. Well, a bunch of little bits on the body here. So you can see I installed 1 mirror and 1 headlight bucket, but I just thought I'd show that process. Also, the windshield has some sockets that just drop over these posts in the body and then just screw down. So I'll screw that down. The headlight bucket slides in from the front, and it's got a little tab here. You can see this one probably, that just locks it inside the body. So this just fits in like this, and a single screw holds it on. So I'm going to screw that in. And then the mirrors, here, this just drops in. There's a little metal plate that drops over it, and then these real short little screws hold that on, and then it bolts through the side window and holds the side window on. So I'm going to go ahead and get all those mounted. I'm also going to do the clear headlights. Now, Tamiya comes with this decal sheet that has an amber decal to put on this end of the light, and that's probably just fine. I personally don't like those, so I'm going to use this Tamiya clear orange paint, and you can see I masked it, and I put an arrow to remind myself which end to paint, and so I'll put a couple coats of this clear orange on there, and then these lenses snap in to the to this chrome holder, which I don't consider that enough to hold them firmly, so I'll also use a little micro crystal clear to glue them in. So I'm going to do all those processes, plus mount a couple of these mounting tabs like this back here, and just a few other little bits. You can see I used my chrome pen to do a couple details, nothing exciting, and then I'll come back and we'll look at these little side wings. So what I have here is a little arrow piece that fits right here, and there's a handle, and that's black, and I just painted it with clear flat that bolts on, and that just bolts through. No big deal there. But what I wanted to show, and you can see this side I've got it mounted with the bolts, but this little step down here is kind of important, and the instructions show it right here, and they show you gluing it on. Well, I'm here to tell you that when you try to glue something on that's painted in an area that's going to get bumped a lot, which this is, because when you put the body on and off, this is the thing that's going to hit, it just doesn't work. They break off, especially when they're painted. So what I do is, you can see here I drilled 2 small holes, and then I will use one of Tamiya's little 2mm tapping screws, this one right here, to hold it on. So you can see this side's already done. You can see the screw heads here, and I will just hold this piece up here so it matches right there and right there, and I will drill here. And I will drill a couple of the appropriate size holes in this plastic. And what I'll do here is just mark it. And then I'll drill it. And then I'll go ahead and screw it on, and that's going to give me a really strong mounting for that. So I'm going to go ahead and bolt this side on and bolt this on. That is approaching the end of the actual body. Now the next thing is the dash, and that just mounts here to the bottom of the windshield with 2 screws, and we've already gone over painting that. So I've got to do that, and then a couple little brackets on top, and then we got to glue on my headlights I talked about, and then we'll glue on these grills, and they just will glue on with the same micro crystal clear that I use on the other chrome parts. So I'll get those little bits all done, and then we'll finish the top cap. Boy, the body's just about done. By the way, I love the looks of this truck. I just love it. It's really looks nice. Just a couple quick notes about these roof lights. You can see I glued in this this roof cap, and I've mounted 3 of these. Now the instructions show you mounting these after you have the body all put together. As a matter of fact, they showed us the very last thing. But I could tell right away I didn't want to do that, because I want to be able to rotate the body, maybe sit it upside down. It's much easier now. The other thing is they show you gluing on these lenses before you mount them to the body. Another thing I didn't want to do, because again I might set them upside down, knock the lens loose. So these are pretty simple. They just drop on. They have a nice alignment pin, and then on the bottom there's a kind of a spacer that drops over here, and then a screw goes in to hold it down. So really pretty simple. The square hole in the back is for the wiring to run through if you put lights in them. This truck was designed before the new MFC lights, so probably what I would do if I was going to light it up would be to drill an additional hole right here to pop an LED through. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I'm going to do a custom one of these pretty soon, and I'll light it up. So if you want to see lighting on an Aeromax, that will be coming. The other thing is they tell you to mount this dash before you put these in, which you can see right away that that would be in the way. So I left that off, and I'll mount that now. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these on with my favorite micro crystal clear. Do not use plastic cement or super glue because it will craze the plastic. Then I'll mount the dash, and then I think I'm pretty much done with this part of it. The next thing is the cap, and then the little wings that fit on the back of the body, and then we're closing in on finishing this thing. Next step is to assemble these side wings, which mount right here at the end. Now, I discovered an interesting little tidbit in the instructions, is that they show the grab handle mounted on the inside of this one and the outside of this one. Now, I can't imagine that that's correct. I would assume the grab handle would be on the outside of both of them. So it's just something to watch for. These little brackets are just held on with a single screw. This is assembled with a single screw and a nut. And put that on there. Show you. Okay, and then this grab handle I will mount on the outside of this. So I'll get those finished up. Now when it's time to mount these on the truck, there's two brackets here that match up with bolt holes on the back cab, and then they show gluing this to the back of the, would be up here. But I refuse to do that because it would make it impossible to take the cap off or take these wings off. So what I will do the same thing I did with the steps in the side of the body. I will drill a hole through here, and then when I put the cap on, I'll line it up and drill through here and put a little self-tapping screw in to hold it and not glue it. So I'll mount that, and that's done, and then I have to finish this cap. Okay, the cap is easy. Just one bracket mounts here. A couple screws hold it. I'll throw one in there just to hold it on. And those little tabs right there are designed to fit into this tab on the body and hold the front edge, and then two screws hold the back edge. The windows are just a little bit of microcrystal clear glue on the rim, and they just glue in from the inside, and they're tinted pretty nice, so I don't think anything else is really going to be required there. I'll get that set up and we'll do the final assembly. Well, there we go, all finished. You can see I've got the rear panels on with the grab rail on the outside. You can see the screw I used to hold this instead of tape or glue. so that way I can also remove it in the future. Yeah, a couple pieces of blue tape there holding the wipers down while the glue dries. I glue those on with microcrystal clear. The light lenses are glued on, and you can see that orange turned out really nice. Now this body, the way it goes on, there's some some nubs there that fit into the front bumper. And then this just pulls over this back lip like that. And then a couple of screws hold the body on. So 2 screws take the body on and off. I'm going to put those in, clean up my bench. We'll take some more pictures of it as a finished product. Okay, there's the Ford Aeromax all done. I love the looks of this truck. I think it just turned out spectacular. Remember, this is completely stock and no option parts on it. I did not use all the decals, but I'll probably put some of those on there later. Those great lines, went together really well. First kit I've ever found that had something weird in the instructions, and that was the in and out on these handles. But other than that, just fabulous. I did make one minor little mod, which was to add a sheet of plastic to cover up the holes in the back. And the other mod, of course, was using screws to hold on this little step and screws to hold on the upper part of these wings. But other than that, just like it came out of the box, you just don't need a lot of hop-up parts to make a beautiful truck. And it runs great. Got a 10-channel Fly-Sky radio, which you saw in the first part. So there you go, Tamiya Ford Aeromax build. I know I probably did a little more detail in this video than some of them, but I wanted to kind of show for novice builders, if you want to build a Tamiya truck, it's not that hard. You just kind of do it one step at a time, and pretty soon you have a beautiful rig. I am going to do a custom Aeromax build-up because I like the truck so much. I'll probably do a day cab where I'll saw it off and build a flatbed. And I think I'll actually do that pretty soon because I want to light it up and do some other things. But I really, really like this truck a lot. So there you go. As always, I really appreciate you watching. Give me a thumbs up. Those help with the YouTube ratings. Subscribe to the channel. We do lots of Tamiya truck stuff here. And thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.